Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Brand Design Masters podcast. I am here today with Jacob Cass, and Jacob is a good friend and colleague of mine. We've ping-ponged on each other's shows in the past, and he's the principal of the award-winning branding agency called Just Creative. He's got clients that include Disney and Nike and Red Bull and Omega, some big clients, some small to medium-sized businesses as well. He also hosts the Just Branding podcast and runs an industry-leading blog called Just Creative Blog. He also coaches and mentors other creative professionals in a mastermind coaching program he has that's called the Inner Circle. And he's coming to us today from Sydney, Australia. So with that, I'd like to welcome Jacob.
Thank you very much, Philip. What an intro. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
It's really great to have you. I'm excited to have you on the show. So let's talk. We're both very much in the same place. We're actually doing a lot of some of the same things. So I think that we have a lot to talk about. We both work with creative clients, obviously, but then also creative professionals, kind of helping them navigate the creative economy that we're finding ourselves in now. Would you say that now is a good time to be a designer?
I think it's the best time to be a designer. It's never been a better time, in my opinion, because there's so many opportunities available and we can do so much with our thinking. So yes, as a simple answer to your question.
So what kind of challenges would you say are that designers or creative pros are seeing these days? I mean, you have a special kind of insight to that because you run this coaching program. So what are you hearing from people inside of the inner circle?
Well, it's not just the inner circle, it's the inner triangle. It's my little spin on it.
Triangle. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Misspoke. I misspoke.
No worries at all. So in the inner triangle, yes. So I have just some context. I have two groups. I have an early career group, which is more beginners or people out of school or people transitioning into different roles. And there's also a pro group that are more established. So the different groups have different requirements or topics, I guess. I found as an early career designer, often the discussions are about niching, positioning, and setting up your business, getting systems in place, and really understanding how to target customers versus the established clients. They're seeing more challenges in terms of competition and they're trying to scale up. They're trying to integrate more services into their agency, integrating more strategy into it. Print is going on the decline. There's more tools available for I guess, smaller businesses to create their own designs. So that kind of market is shrinking. So that's directly having a knock-on effect for all of these other businesses. And I'm sure I know that you've talked about this on your show as well. So it's definitely very rampant at the moment. And that's why this trend towards brand strategy or solving bigger problems is so prevalent at the moment.
Do you think that the inner triangle and groups of that sort are really in great need right now? Are you hearing that designers feel that they are having a hard time networking or they don't have a tribe or it's hard for them to find, points of view and opinions of people to bounce things off of?
There's a lot of noise. That's the problem. There's a lot of communities out there. There's a lot of fake gurus, and people can be misled. So I feel for people that have been misled or following people that haven't actually done things or aren't really speaking from real world experience. So yes. So I forgot the exact question you said.
Well, if designers are having a hard time finding a network or finding, groups of people who they like and trust that they can bounce things off of and help them gain confidence.
Yeah. So I think the communities are larger than they have ever been before. So there's a lot of support and there's a lot of content and information out there that wasn't there, say, 10 years ago. So I think, as I said before, there's never been a better time because of that. Everyone shares their resources. The design community in general are very open and they share resources and they don't see each other as competition. Well, most people don't. And I think that's especially prevalent on Instagram, where everyone is competing in the same space, you're sharing resources and like carousel posts and all that sort of jazz. And it's it feels like a community. At least that's what I'm feeling. So it's very important to be a part of that community, to engage and to learn from others and also share what you're learning. And that's really been the backbone of how I've grown my business over the years, is just sharing value and sharing what I've learned and at that particular time.
So in your coaching a program, and I know that you have a Facebook group as well, what is the population like in terms of people who have full-time jobs in agencies or, client side, or people who are freelancers or have their own thing?
Yep. So the early career group, they're either just out of college or are looking for a job. Some trying to actually actively looking for a job. Others are setting up their side hustle, so they have a full-time position and trying to set up a side hustle. The other group is more established, so they're actively growing their business, or they have their systems in place, and they're just going on about their daily business, but want the accountability and the clarity and the community with a group like that. And that's really what it provides. So there's a Slack channel, there's like an Instagram group, private group, and Facebook as well. So everything is on hand, and because it's a smaller, tight-knit community, you get to know each other better, and you can rely on each other, and the replies are generally quicker and more in-depth. And I find that on smaller communities, you may not get that depth or that one-on-one connection as well as a mastermind group. I'm not sure what your opinion is that from your mastermind group.
Well, do you find that people know that they need this, or when you are going out and marketing this to people and telling them that it's something that you offer, is it something that they kind of know exists and they're looking for one, or is it something that's fairly new to them, this kind of mastermind idea?
I'd say it's fairly new. So especially I get a lot of DMs about it, but they don't know if all the details, like what they're exactly going to get out of it exactly. So just talking to them and understanding their goals, I can see if they're the right fit or not. And that's really why I have this like screening process to ensure that they're driven and they're going to be a good fit for the group that's already established, so everyone can gel, right? And that's really been the basis of having this as or having such a strong group, is because everyone gets along, because they've been screened and they're driven to move ahead. And the retention rate's been amazing.
Yeah. So your groups are ongoing, so they
Yes.
they're not time bound. So once you join, you're kind of in it and it keeps going.
Yes. Yep. So I know yours is like a 12-week program, whereas mine is more of a group, like a group that keeps going. Two groups. Sorry. So yeah.
So are the both groups basically the same size?
Yes. So I cap them at 12. They've gone, the pro group is at 12. The early career group, so I allow members to pause. So during the summer, a few people can pause their membership and then they can come back. So the early career group, I think there's about 8 at the moment that are live. So there's room for about 4 more at present, but it goes up and down depending on people's lives. Like some people are moving, some people are building a house, some people are want a summer break. So I'm like, okay, you can pause whenever you like. I don't have any contracts or anything like that. So it's really about what they get out of it. And I want people to be getting value from it. And how you get value from something is like how much you put into it. And I know you have a question at the end of your show about this, and this kind of ties into that.
So how much, when you run these groups, how much do you actually get involved in them? Do you actively participate? Do you try to stay more on the sidelines and, facilitate the networking between people, or what is kind of the percentage of Jacob that they get?
Yep. So how they're structured is there's generally 10 people in a group. There's always like 2 people sick or can't make it. So it's generally about 10 people. Every person has about 10 minutes as a hot seat, or you can bring up your wins, you bring up any challenges you have that week, and we talk about the goals for the future as well. Sometimes other people chip in as well, but generally I just ask questions to see how they're moving, to get them talking, right? I don't want to be the one talking, but if they're asking for advice or tips for a particular question, then I can come in, offer my perspective as well as the group. And there's a very active chat as well when this is going on. So people share their resources as the chat is going on. So that's what's super valuable. And the Slack channel as well, but in between sessions can help people in between each week, right? So I'd probably say that I'm talking, I don't know, 20% of the time, and everyone else is talking the rest of the time, as long as you ask the right questions. So that's really, especially in the early career group, figuring out what they want and how to get there. I find empowering them to figure out solutions on their own is really what empowers them to build their business, versus like me telling them, this is how you get clients, this is how you build your business. It's like, it's too instructional, right?
Right.
So it's the more I learn about coaching and go through the process of doing that, I find that's the best way to empower people.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So let's pivot a little bit. Let's talk about you've run an agency, had some very big clients, some medium-sized clients, but now you've also started to build a personal brand and become an influencer in the branding and design space. And so when did that kind of dawn on your career? When did you kind of pivot, adding on that layer of influencer or content development that kind of led to this larger scope of your world?
Yeah, it's a good question. Just to give a little bit of backstory, I started my site called Just Creative Design at the time, which was in 2007. And that was a design blog that I used to share my university studies and design studies. And I was just sharing on there. The landscape that back then was very different, but there was a smaller community and there weren't many bloggers. And I really got into this blogging world back then, which is a little bit different to what it is today, which is all about content marketing and so forth. It's just a different name, less humanity. But back then it was very small communities, and I got exposure to the blogging world. And I was like, wow, what is this? And I realized that there's so much opportunity here in terms of creating your own business and earning money from your blog and creating a profile for yourself and a brand for yourself. So I use that as the foundation to build my influence and to share what I was learning at every point of my journey. So back then it was university studies. These days is brand strategy. Somewhere in between it was like logo design and brand. So at every single point of my time since 2007, it's always been about sharing what I'm learning and where I'm at and just resources. So that's how I've kind of grown my influence over the years, and just by sharing value. And I think those principles are still very valid today. But that's kind of how I've built my brand through blogging, content marketing, whatever you want to call it, social media, and just being active and engaging in the community.
So you had your agency, and then you built a blog, and your blog became very popular. And you also took a unique approach, which you shared with me before, about driving traffic to your blog by hiring external writers to do product reviews and things like that. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a really interesting, unique aspect of your blog that other people can learn from.
Yeah. So before we get into that, I just wanted to give some backstory just so people have the right context. In the beginning, it was me writing articles. It was very driven by me as a brand. These days, I have a lot of guest authors wanting to contribute to my site in return for a link from a high domain authority website. So that's kind of shifted from me to them and guest writers. And occasionally I'll have my own articles sprinkled in. And I'm also hiring tech writers for my blog as well. So reviewing gear for designers and mostly designers, but creatives and programmers and things like that. So it's kind of like a design and tech related niche. The idea behind that is for passive income and affiliate marketing. So whenever I'm recommending these goods, I found this out. I found this out when someone contributed a blog, actually. It was like the best laptops or something. Sorry to go on a tangent, but someone contributed an article on like the best laptops, and I was getting some traffic, and I was like, I really need to see how this can be monetized. So I found out that through Amazon, you can actually use their associates program to get referral links. So I found out that this was actually a way to make money while also helping a lot of other designers out. Because when you're looking for something, right, you're like typing best laptops for designers, like boom, and then my article is coming up there. I was like, this is getting a lot of traffic. I think we can scale this idea. So I ended up hiring writers to research more tech gear related for designers. So I just scaled this idea, and now there's hundreds of articles on tech gear for designers and developers. And that's how I've been making passive income through Amazon Associates and other partners as well. So that's the reason, the long answer for you. That's the reason why I have these tech writers for my blog, and it's because it is a win-win for everyone. And I just did a masterclass webinar on this, on passive income, affiliate marketing, to go all behind the scenes of how I do this, if you're interested in it as well. So just wanted to shout that out.
So you have an agency, and you also are an influencer and have a growing and vibrant community. How do you balance those two things?
It's a good question. So, how do we balance our work and life? So, I have a pretty stringent schedule in terms of just waking up and going to work. So, it's you just get into a routine and you have habits. Like in a nutshell, that's the real answer is the habits that you form. I'll talk a little bit about both so listeners have an understanding. I just want to say thanks for clarifying the affiliate thing first though, because sure. I always forget that people aren't familiar with it. And I'm glad you touched on the cart aspect of it as well. So is that and the most lucrative thing about Amazon. So that's why it's been so successful as well. In terms of work-life balance or work-life integration, as I like to call it, I have a pretty loose system. I have a whiteboard system of like different projects that I've want to work on, and I get shit done really based on what's most important or what's most urgent at that time. And I have the history of all that foundation set up for this to happen as well. So I have the website churning along, I have traffic coming in, I have an email newsletter, I have everything working together as a system to be automated. So that means I have more time to focus my efforts elsewhere and grow in other ways. So the real secret is the systems and the habits, right? So that's how I balance my work-life balance. And I learned a lot of this when I was traveling. So I traveled around the world for about 3 years while freelancing and running an agency. I only worked 4 hours a day. I found that I was super productive in the morning, first 4 hours of the morning. And then after that, just I wasn't as productive. So went to lunch and then had the afternoon off where I did tourists and just relaxed and had beer and all that good stuff. So but as long as I kept to those 4 hours in the morning, that habit of working and focusing on work, on the important stuff, then shit got done. And that's the real secret, if you can have habits and put these systems in place.
So do you, I mean, between the community and the, helping creative professionals and doing your content development and all those aspects and your clients, like when client work comes in, new clients, new projects, you have an ongoing workload from your community, but then client work can ebb and flow, right? It can get very intense. It can slow down. So, and how do you maintain that balance between those two things? Because one is very kind of fluctuates and one is a little more constant.
Yeah. So the client work always takes priority. So if there's deadlines, you always adhere to the clients because you're helping them. Whereas when you run your own business, I guess you're helping yourself, but the reason you're in business is to help others. So once you have the client, you should really treat them with respect and do the proper work, right? So that's how I prioritize things, is to focus on the client work and then on my own brand after the fact. But the reason I can do that and I'm not always stuck in the weeds is because of those systems that were put in place, as I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. So how do you market your agency?
I haven't done any advertising since 2007 or paid advertising. My marketing strategy has been an inbound marketing strategy. So I have a lot of content that ranks well on search, which is backed up by a lot of backlinks to my site because of all the content over the years. So my site gets ranked high, which means I get more traffic to my site and then I don't have to pay for advertising or so forth. So it's a big mixture of content marketing, relationship building, and constant, I guess, being top of mind on social media. And that's really how I get clients and people find me, thankfully, which I'm very fortunate for. And yeah, that's how I balance finding clients.
So do you have partners either in your agency business, or do you have partners in your personal brand influencer business? Do you do everything yourself, or do you have VAs, or what's that look like?
So up until about a year ago, it was all myself. Occasionally I would hire developers for website work. However, recently I've hired a VA, some extra writers to really scale that Amazon affiliate side of things. In terms of partnerships, what makes my agency stand out, or how I sell myself when I'm talking through the sales process or with my potential clients, is that it's like a one-man shop and it does everything from A to soup to nuts, really. And that's really my point of difference, that I can bring marketing, design, strategy, business, website design, branding, logos, like the whole mixed print work. That's like all my skill set. And that's really what I find that clients like in my work, is because it's a whole agency, but in one person. They don't have to manage different things. They can talk directly to me. And that's some of the biggest selling points of like what makes me different. And that's what I find works for me. So lots of different skills in one package.
So when you were coming up into, into your own agency, and, it's starting to build your agency and get more clients, start your influencer kind of side of things, what kind of difficulties did you come up against, and how did you ever overcome those?
Difficulties. So I think it's, in hindsight, you can tell what the difficulties were, like what you were doing wrong, because you know better now. It's just, I think it's there's a lot that comes down to mindset in terms of being the order taker, or how you talk to clients, and just how you run your business, right? The processes and the systems, these improve with experience. And there's no way to teach all of that to someone that's straight out of design school. You can't learn all this. It's through experience. And that's why experience is so useful, because you can have that hindsight, or that knowledge or vision to how to handle things better, how to close sales, or how to talk to people, how to actually help people achieve their goals versus just executing on what they came to you for, digging deeper. So these things are really what I made mistakes on in the beginning of my career, especially when I was traveling. Selfishly, I didn't want to talk on the phone. I was traveling. I never spoke to clients on the phone for about 3 years. I just didn't. I did everything by email. But in hindsight, I could have made better relationships with these clients if I talked to them. I had video calls and truly got to understand their needs, versus then me just doing logos or branding work. I could be a little bit more focused on their business. And that's, I guess, the challenges that I, in hindsight, can look back on.
So when you were, it's easier to do that when you are not doing strategy, when you're doing design, you're doing websites, things like that. So now, as you've gotten deeper into delivering strategy work and, coaching, innovation, business consulting, essentially, have you amped up that, connection on the phone and the face-to-face on Zoom?
Totally.
So you're doing much more in terms of building relationships?
Yep, totally. And that's where I went wrong in the beginning. I wasn't doing enough human to human relationship building. These days, the systems, well, let's put it in context. Before, it was like an email system, right? People contacted me by email, a contact form. I sent them a form for them to fill out, so I got a brief. These days, I have a calendar system. People book in on the calendar. I talk to them either face by face or on the phone. We get to know each other better. I can figure out if we're the right fit, and I can figure out the deeper problems, so I can help craft a proposal or some solutions that may not necessarily have been what they were actually came to me for in the first place. And it's only through those asking these deeper questions that you can find this information out. So that's how my systems have changed now.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point, that discovery and that, really diving into the client's problems is what really exposes what you can do to help them. And also many times exposes more opportunities for you to do more work than they even came to you for in the first place.
Totally.
So what kind of mentors or influencers or influences have you had in your career as you've grown? Where have those influences come from?
So I haven't really had one particular mentor or someone that I followed like in detail for a long period of time. I've had a very diverse exposure to a lot of different people and businesses through the blog and communities on social media and all of that. So I've really learned from many different places, and that's how I like to learn, is from lots of different places and taking bits and pieces from different places and applying it to my work. In recent years, I think Chris Do has had a huge influence on the whole industry. I love what he's doing for the industry as a whole. Where was he like a decade ago? Just really, really being open and sharing everything for all his wisdom. It's been great. More recently, Mike Jander on Instagram has been amazing, just to share his side of things of how he ran an agency and been so open with it. Tom Ross, who runs Design Cuts. I've been a partner with him for, I don't know, 7 years now. So we've gone back and forth a lot. I've helped grow his business. He's helped grow mine. So we work together. So those sorts of people, some close, some closer than other, well, some close. Some of them are close, some of them are just more in the distance. So just learning from different people and applying it to me is what has helped. I think early in my career, it was the smaller design communities that helped. So blogging, like commenting on blogs back then was very active, kind of like chat rooms, or I guess the Instagram DMs now. But back then it was very close knit and you could learn from each other. So that was where my influence was back then. And then throughout travel, I was pretty solo for like 3 years. I didn't really have anyone that I followed. It was pretty just like, I do my work, I do my travel, and then that's it, right? Just enjoy life. So it kind of changed.
Did you get, and I'm always very, very interested in where people find inspiration for what they do. When you were traveling and you said that, it was just kind of, you did your 4 hours of work and you were traveling and you were experiencing life. Did you feel like you got inspiration for your work through that travel experience? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, people ask that, and I don't think directly it affected my designs or anything like that, but it's I think the exposure to different cultures is so powerful for anyone. Just be more, it just gives you more empathy, and it opens your eyes to a lot of things, right? Yeah, like just how fortunate we are in the first world countries, and things like that as well. But yeah, I don't think it's directly affected my designs at all, to be honest, because whenever I always design for the client, everyone has a style, right? But I like clean, minimal, clever designs. However, like if you go to an Asian country, for example, the aesthetic is totally different. So like, I'm not bringing that into my work
Right.
as one example, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about the future, not Christo's future, but the future. So what do you see kind of expanding or coming into view or influencing, in the marketplace right now? What should people be paying attention to?
Well, we kind of touched on it earlier, the commoditization of design. Just got that out.
Yeah.
And the trend towards being a little bit more strategic in your work is definitely one. I think the leveling of education is another one. So everyone has access to much more education these days, and we're like the big Ivy League schools are being leveled out, right? So people how competing with just like people like you and me is going to be interesting to watch how they're going to adapt, because that whole field has changed. There's also a very big trend called blanding at the moment, which you'll notice is very simple products, or mostly consumer packaged goods that are very simple in nature. And what's interesting is that this came from these smaller brands trying to be different from the other mass-produced brands, and now the mass-produced brands are bringing out versions of these like bland products. So like the toothbrush industry, for example, you'll notice I'm not sure if you've followed that, but there's like dozens of different toothbrush brands now, and even places like brands like Colgate have brought out these bland versions of their toothbrush. So I think that's an interesting trend to watch. Education and the move into strategy. So there's a couple that we could focus on.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting one. There was a food brand, kind of a startup food brand called Brandless that was, they basically were putting out generic food products, but it was done under the guise of kind of like, the Apple of food products, and addressing the fact that millennials are kind of anti-brand essentially. But I think that Apple has had, an incredible influence on branding and design anyway, but their aesthetic, how minimal that is and how simple that is, has kind of infected all sorts of different industries, but not in a good way. It's kind of like they've lost the they've adopted clean, minimal design for clean, minimal design's sake, not for the benefit of the consumer or the communication of the brand experience, right? Totally. And so I think that's a very, very interesting observation.
Yeah, like just especially in consumer packaged goods where you'd like to see a photo of the product where like you could get a packet of
Yeah.
muesli, for example, it just says muesli. Like I want to know what type of muesli this is. There's so many different types out there. So it's just like it's gone a little too far in some cases. But there are certain brands that I do admire for that aesthetic as well. It's just that it's been copied so much and it's just getting a little bit samey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are you planning for the future? What do you have coming down the road?
Yeah, so so at the moment I have the inner triangle with the two coaching groups, and I have a Facebook community, and I have a email newsletter. But I want something in between these I guess platforms, something a little bit more accessible but with less noise. So Facebook has a lot of noise, and the inner triangle is very tight knit. So I'm thinking of bringing out a community that's in between, like a small paid membership community with less noise. So a very small cost in, I'm thinking around $5 and $10 just for context, where that's like a monthly fee. But for that, you get access to discounts and special events or webinars. I'm still fleshing this out, but with less noise, and the idea that it could be a little bit more accessible and a little bit more tight knit than some other communities out there. So that's been on my mind. I'm still podcasting, still bringing out content, still blogging, amping up the Amazon affiliate sales. And who else? Who knows what else I have? Like, I'm looking at my whiteboard up here, and I have like an ideas list, and it's like course. Do I bring out a course? Do I have a book? Do I open a shop? Do I do a masterclass, an online seminar, a boot camp? Should I do some more virtual workshops? Like I have so many ideas. The hard thing is knowing what to focus on. But I think when you think about a community and what could work for others, I think the membership community is the next step for me. So who knows?
That sounds great. All those sound great ideas. You should do them all, but you're gonna have to, get
Eventually,
some help, Jacob.
I know.
So there's a very important question I want to ask you. I always ask my guests this question at the end, which is, do you have a personal mantra or personal manifesto that you try to live your life by?
I do, and I knew where I read it first. It was a magnet on my fridge as a kid, and it was, you only get out what you put in. I've never forgot that. So whatever you're doing, like you do it well, and what you get out is exactly what you put in. So you focus your efforts and you get something back. So that's really the mantra, how I live my life, is it's you give and take, right?
Well, Jacob, I got to say, for someone who's pretty hooked into the professional design community, you are really putting in. And so I really want to congratulate you for that. You've done amazing things for the creative professional community, and everyone should be checking you out. So where can they find you? Where's the best place to come across what you're doing?
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being speaking with you, and you had some great questions. So thank you. And people can find me at my website, justcreative.com, and all my social media handles are also the same. So I'm pretty prevalent on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So they're my 4 ones that I focus on. A little bit on YouTube as well, but not as much, especially not as much as you, Philip. but yeah, justcreative.com.
Awesome. Well, Jacob, thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate your coming on the Brand Design Masters podcast.
Thank you, mate.